Welcome to the Hospitality Maverick podcast with me, Michael Tingsare. We at Hospitality Mavericks are here to inspire leaders to create heart-centered and profitable businesses from the inside out, the kind that both employees and customers love and support. Thanks to BizSimply for sponsoring this episode as our show partner. And BizSimply is the all-in-one HR, workforce management, rota and operations software designed and built by hospitality experts to make every shift run like clockwork. And we join forces to help the industry to find new ways to become even more innovative in how we lead our people, how we operate, to how we grow our businesses, to how we serve our customers. Together we want to share strategies and tools that can make the industry thrive long term, not just survive.
When we look at experiences, when we look at storytelling, it's not just in the food that you serve or the accommodation that you're providing. It's in every single touch point where the consumer comes into contact with your product or service. And that comes in terms of the interior, it comes into the decor, it involves the way you treat your customers, it involves the identity and the identity system and the strategy behind this as well. And so I think these things are really, really important. We hear a lot about talking about bespoke, I think, in the hospitality and design industry as well, about having bespoke features. And I think that a few years ago, maybe even 5-10 years ago, bespoke was something that was very unique. Now, I think bespoke is almost an expectation.
This is Sophia Ahamed, principal at Monograph&Co, which is a design agency based in Vancouver, Canada. And they produce compelling brand identities, publications, product packaging, and digital experiences for clients both locally and internationally. In this conversation, we talk about the power of having a story and a brand that talks to people's hearts, and how you as a business owner can leverage your own story and how this can make you stand out in a crowded market. Sophia shares her learnings about how you get your purpose and brand communications to work hand in hand, and also what her biggest learnings have been in the last 2 years when it comes to branding and storytelling. As the conversation evolves, we also learn that we both are very big fan of Stoic philosophy, and we discuss what you can use these two when it comes to manage life and business better, especially when things get very uncertain. Before you tune in, please sign up for our weekly newsletter, Maverick Talk, which is packed with more Maverick insights, strategies and tools. Find the link in the show notes or visit hospitalitymavericks.com. Now, get ready to deep dive into branding, storytelling, and Stoic philosophy. Enjoy! I have talked a lot about on this show about the importance of having a story and scaling it as a business, and also having that understanding of why your business is here and what it's meant to do besides just being a business. And I've been very lucky for the last many episodes to have conversation about this. But today, I think, as always, there's a guest always bring their special angle on this. And Sophia, I talked with a couple of times, and as you will follow her after this conversation, I'm sure on LinkedIn, you will see she also has some interesting angles. And we just talked about before we went live here as well about the Stoics, which some of you out there know that I become quite interested in over the pandemic. And we were just talking about the book I put in a newsletter this week as well. That's called Stillness is Key. So yeah, if you haven't read that book, read that book. But coming back to, again, the power of storytelling and why it is so important for your brand, and actually how you actually build the brand with purpose at the center of it, is what we're going to be talking about today. So welcome to the show, Sophia. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. It's great to be here.
I gave a bit of a heads up in the intro about who you are and your business and so on, but just for people to really get the picture of like who you are, the journey you've been on, what it is that you are trying to solve here in the world, and the work you do.
Yeah, so I own a design agency called Monograph&Co, and we work with people in hospitality and retail, as well as food and beverage, and we help them build their brands and brand identity systems for their operations, as well as their spaces in terms of hotels and restaurants and other customer experience based works as well. So that's what we do, and our work really focuses on bringing that unique sense of storytelling and detail to artistry and craftsmanship in the work that we do. So that's a little bit about us.
So why was it that you set out to start the business? What was the made the itch for you to say, I need to go and do this. I can really help some people here.
Yeah, well, I think that, there's so much potential in hospitality, and customer experience. It really drives, and what we do in life. And I was really inspired to, bring a sense of a different kind of unique perspective into these spaces, to create something that's a bit more detail oriented in terms of artistry and the passion that this industry really brings to the table. And so that really motivated me to create something of my own. As well, and I think that with a lot of businesses, I have my own idea, my own vision of what I'd love to see and contribute to the world, and this was one of my ways of doing that. Yeah.
What background did you come from before you started up your own business? Because you've been around for 5 years, so congratulations with that. People that's in business know that that's not an easy toll, even if you're a small business or a big business. Staying alive for 5 years is always an accomplishment.
It's been quite an interesting 5 years, that's for sure. But yeah, I think for me, I've always been into the arts and design. I've been a visual artist for the majority of my life, and design and branding has been a part of that process for me for the longest time. I think for me, I started on my creative journey right after I left high school when I was 17. So I think I've been making things and creating things since I was a young child, and it's been a path that's led me to exactly where I am today. And interestingly enough, although it's very, as you probably know, it's very hard to see um, in the interim, but when you look back, you can kind of see how all these roads kind of connected into one thing. And so yeah, before I started my business, I spent a lot of time working for other advertising agencies and different types of agencies that worked with clients from all over the world, and with different mediums and different niches and things of that nature. So it gave me a lot of perspective. It gave me a lot of knowledge in terms of behavior systems and how we connect with each other as humans on a very basic kind of common level, and how that can translate into the world that we live in and the spaces that we congregate in and the work that we do.
That's super interesting. You're talking about almost behavioral theory here, and how we actually, behave as humans in different contexts. If I, how do you bring that to life in when you work with brands? Because I guess the typical customer, you can correct me, comes because they want to increase sales, or something is definitely not working.
Right. Yeah. I think that, when we're looking at brands and brand development, we talk a lot about, what a brand is. So let's start from the basic. What is a brand? And we can use one of the very common terms of what a brand is, which is what your customers say you are, and you live in the hearts and minds of your ideal customers. And if you look at a brand from that perspective, it really shows us a kind of window into how do we connect with others, and how do we behave, and what are our spending habits, what are our psychographics that go into customer behaviors to make them purchase one thing instead of the other. I think that looking at these behavior systems can really drive forward the decisions that we make with the brands that we develop and the businesses that we create, and the purpose as to why we want to create them. So there's lots to dig into there, and I think that's one thing that our agency really enjoys, is not just looking at something that looks very visually engaging and that has all those touch points, but also kind of looking at the research behind it all and saying, well, why does this drive certain sales? Why does this drive a certain type of experience or a certain type of emotion or feeling or action, and how we can compound on that and really take it to its full potential.
It's really interesting there where you talk about actually stepping back and do the work, because I have in different connections on the show here in some writing talk about the importance of strategizing in your business and actually stepping out of it, because we all are, guilty of in our own business getting caught up in the doing. Is that also what you see when you go in and work with, you know, smaller brands or brands in general, that thing about stepping back and actually start looking at these things that actually informs better decisions, and giving that time is sometimes the issue.
Absolutely. I think that, and again, like you said, it happens to everybody's businesses, and myself included, is that we start to look at things from our perspective and maybe even our friends in the industry's perspective, but we forget that we need to speak the language of the consumer and the customer. And the likelihood is that they don't see the world in the way that we do from our perspective. They have quite a different perspective and quite a different pain point and need. And so stepping back and looking at that and saying, okay, let's get a different perspective. Let's get a different view. And let's look at, again, instead of looking at our customers from their basic sort of demographics, let's look at their psychographics. Who are they? What's their day to day like? Why would they come and buy our product or engage in our service rather than going to a competitor? Understanding that first and foremost, our businesses are not meant for everybody. Not everybody's going to like us. That's true for life as well. Not everybody's going to like us, but that's okay. We can embrace our differences. We can embrace what makes us unique in the marketplace and really connect to those who connect to our message, our purpose, and our feeling.
And it's really interesting you say that actually going in to see the customer's whole life, because different groups of customer can use your business in different ways, or they engage with you. Some people actually engage with your brand, but they never buy from you, but they're still an advocate somehow. I don't know if you've seen that. I've heard that a lot, because I've spent another piece of work we're doing right now. We're talking with these amazing leaders that runs these very purpose-driven businesses that's good for the people, society, and the planet. And they've been around for a long time. They're also very good businesses, but they talk a lot about this. Really, really going deep in understanding how their customer use their business. And also, it's okay, all of them don't buy, as long as they support their movement or their what they want to change in the world, or what they would like to see be changed.
Absolutely. And I think that when we look at our ideal customers or the ideal group of individuals that will really be impacted or influenced by the product and services that we put out, there's different tiers, there's different levels. Like you said, some people are very supportive. Some people will engage with your brand later down the line. Others might become super fans of what we're doing. And so there's many different ways that we can kind of have a various amount of touch points for various different types of individuals. And I think that it's important to not just seek that out, but also embrace that and understand, why that is and why something like that is a good thing for brand building.
We touched a bit about the power of storytelling, because to be able to tell a story, in my view, same if you want to write a great vision for a business or to describe your purpose, you really have to spend time on that as well. How good are businesses in your view, especially now we in hospitality? How good are we in hospitality to tell these stories and bring them to life? Because if I think about the brands I really engage with myself, it's really not about the feature and the design, but it's that story that's told through these elements, the design, the features, or the touch points.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, storytelling has been something I think that's blown up a lot about in terms of conversation in the last few years, especially after the pandemic's been slowing down a little bit. And the thing is that storytelling has been with us since the beginning of time. It's something that we all do, whether we're conscious of it or not. When someone asks you, hey, how's your day? What happened today? You start engaging in storytelling, telling me about certain aspects. And, there's usually certain parts the climax and the kind of the end point, and the point where we kind of build up to something. Storytelling has been a part of our fabric of human nature since the dawn of time, and this has been well documented and well researched. So with that being said, it's exceptionally important, especially in hospitality, when we are connecting with people constantly. We're trying to create these experiences, these unique experiences, whether it's even if it's a product that lives on a shelf that's packaging, it still needs to tell that story. It's really, really important. I think I really love hearing what you said. It's like, it's all these elements together. When we look at experiences, when we look at storytelling, it's not just in the food that you serve or the accommodation that you're providing. It's in every single touch point where the consumer comes into contact with your product or service. And that comes in terms of the interior, it comes into the decor, it involves the way you treat your customers, it involves the identity and the identity system and the strategy behind this as well. And so I think these things are really, really important. We hear a lot about talking about bespoke, I think, in the hospitality and design industry as well, about having bespoke features. And I think that a few years ago, maybe even 5, 10 years ago, bespoke was something that was very unique. Now, I think bespoke is almost an expectation in a way. We expect things to be different. We expect things to be kind of one of a kind in terms of the experiences. So it's an expectation. So it's no longer that thing that's setting us apart. And so, if that's the case, what does set us apart? It's the way we tell these stories, and the way we constantly strive to get better and better at the experiences that we provide.
How good are we then at telling stories? If you should like give you like, what is your view on business's ability to tell these stories? Are we on the way? Are we far away? Is there lots of potential still here? Because when I look at the, not only in hospitality, but I can still see that focusing on pitching benefits, features, some kind of belonging to the brand, I don't really feel, because I don't really understand why they're telling me that. I don't know. How do you see it? Is there a huge potential, or I'm totally wrong?
I think there's potential. I think there's always going to be such a potential for people to get better at crafting their own unique stories. I think that it's going to outweigh a lot of businesses who just focus solely on features, because the thing is that it just starts to become kind of like a jumble. And I think you can. I mean, we as human beings are great tests. If you want to test whether or not something works better, ask yourself when you're going on a vacation, or when you want to choose to go to a restaurant, or when you are interested in booking a hotel or any sort of service, what draws you beyond just the features and the fact that it's had good reviews. What really attracts you? What brands keep you coming back for more, and why? And a lot of those kind of have a special kind of unique place in our hearts. It's the way we feel. It's the way we resonate. It's the way it makes us, it gives us a sense of something that captures our attention. And sometimes these things can be very individual, something that reminds you of your childhood, something that makes you feel a specific way, something that tells a story that really integrates with your own personal belief systems and lifestyle. It could be many different things, but it's usually this that really encapsulates the customer on a long term basis and keeps them coming back for more. And that's usually the stories that go beyond just basic features. A lot of features, I think, again, people are becoming very sophisticated with their experiences. They crave experiences, especially after being in lockdown for such a long time. And so it's becoming an expectation rather than something that's bells and whistles. Like, I expect to be treated well. I expect to have good meals if I'm going to a very nice restaurant. I expect to be having a specific type of service. So if that's an expectation, what's next? What else is bringing me to the table?
I was thinking, is this also in like the storytelling? Do you see it like a brand? Because in hospitality, in the moment we had for some time, and I think we will have for some time still to come, unfortunately, a staffing crisis. And then we talk about the employer brand. How important are the story here? They're important for the customers, but the employees are there every day.
Yeah, well, I think it's very important to have that sense of purpose integrated into what you do. I think a lot of people miss the point that it's not just how you treat the customer, but it's the entire experience in its totality. Everything from how your staff is being treated to how your employees and what it feels like to be in that environment. All of this really encompasses the brand in its totality and the strategy that goes behind it. So these things are really, really important. Not just what a forward-facing company does, but also what it does behind the scenes as well. I think that we see that a lot with brands of today. The ones that we really love, the ones that we really cheer for, are the ones that treat everybody well and that share that sense of purpose and storytelling throughout, not just when it feels right or when it's necessary. And so I think that this is going to be a really important shift, I think, in mindset and in growth going forward.
And when we talk about this staffing crisis and brands in general, how good have they been? I don't know if you looked into this, but I think they were very good in the pandemic to talk about the people, what they're sharing these stories. But uh, have they forgot that, and now it's more like a recruitment piece again, a benefits and features kind of thing because the pressure is so much on? And what is your view on the opportunities here? Because I believe there's a huge opportunity here because there's many businesses actually have a really great story. If it's a small local business or it's a big chain, some of them have some really good stories. They just forget to tell them and think nobody cares about that. But that actually will draw the people you need to work in your businesses to you because they didn't know this about you.
Yeah, I think that people, especially after what's happened over the last 2 years, are looking for something that's more purposeful, more driven. They're more interested in living and working for a company and supporting a company that has meaning to them beyond just the like I said before, beyond just the features. Um, and so I think it's a really unique point that needs to and should be continuously explored. I think that reverting back to the way things used to be is just not it's just not possible. I think we're far beyond that point. I think now is a great time to kind of really step out and do something that's unique and provides a unique perspective in the marketplace that benefits everybody. And, I think even as a consumer or even as an employee, we want to support places that are genuine and authentic. Storytelling is a great way to show that sense of authenticity by sharing uh, what you're here for and what you bring to the table that goes beyond, like I said, just it really ignites the sense of hearts and minds of the customers that go beyond just kind of the material, physical features that have become an expectation in a lot of senses over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and if I really should be, and I totally agree with you. I'm totally into this, as people also probably know. But if I have to take the other hat on, the critics to say, yeah, well, what is this all good for? What is the win when I do that? I need something to work now. You talk about long term.
The response to that is not going to be a response I think that many people would want to hear, is that you have to look at playing the long game. None of these are quick fixes. If you've been running a company where um, people haven't been treated well and things have kind of just been shuffling along, at some point you're going to have to sit down and really say, are we going to commit to this type of change? Are we going to commit to the way the world is changing, but also to just being better and providing that experience that we really want to provide? And I think that doing that is the long term game. That's what makes it so difficult, because if it was easy, everybody would do it. If it was easy, everybody would do it, and and we'd get kind of the same thing that we've seen in the last couple of years, which is just generic, right? Like, let's just focus on the features. Let's just focus on what you get in the short term, and then on to the next. But what we see from brands that are actually very successful are the fact that they played the long game. They played the long term game. and they've done it consistently and quite well over time. And they've given themselves that sense of flexibility, because nothing in life is static. So they've given themselves that sense of flexibility, to move with the time, and really change and adapt as well as they could. And so to answer that question, unfortunately, it's not a quick fix. Um, it is playing a long term game, but luckily, it's not something that you have to feel stressed about doing overnight. You can take small, incremental approaches to the step and change things over time, which I think that we've all seen is probably the best strategy because, as we know, nothing in life is permanent, and the world is continuing to change drastically and quite rapidly as well.
I think it was the pandemic as well that got me into really trying to practice this little by little. Little becomes a lot, and it's an African proverb that says that, and it's so right. It's like that 1% every day. Be very clear about what it is you want to achieve, and clarifying that, and actually then just improve your story, your brand, whatever it is, with 1% every day or every week, or but then you can start actually building time in to work on it and say, okay, well, I have to spend at least an hour on this week, and I'm going to spend 2 times 30 minutes. That means I'm 30 minutes ahead of where I were when the week started, and that's great. Then you're moving forward. I think that's what people think is like projects they need, and then thereby become so complex you're not going to do it. But you of course need to have a clear vision and knowing what you need to do. So you need to take that time out to get the overview and understand what are the must win areas here.
Absolutely. I think that's the best approach, honestly. A lot of these things in terms of brand building and development, you have to be committed to playing that long game. And I think that, again, that's the crux of the problem because everybody kind of wants to solve these problems ASAP. It's like, I need to solve this problem yesterday, sort of thing. But there is no quick fix. You have to kind of put in the work. You have to put in the strategy. And like you said, you have to be very clear, of why this is going to be important for you long term. And it's sometimes the best way to kind of observe what is working and what isn't is sit down and ask yourself what makes you more inclined to purchase something or go somewhere and choose something other than something else. Ask your friends and family where their habits are, and you can kind of start to see some habitual sort of habits and spending purposes, that happen, whether you're conscious of it or not, that can really give you some good feedback in terms of how people relate to things, and how people are more inclined to do one thing over the other.
What is the typical common myth you hear about what you do in your job when you go in and help brands with storytelling, the whole piece about how to actually play the long game? What is the typical myth you're hearing about the work you're doing?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think one of the myths is, thinking that, having a good product or service is enough. That's one of the things we hear a lot about is that, oh, our product tastes great, or we make great food, or our hotel is the best, or this is the best, and that's good. That's very good. But it's not enough, and like I said earlier, it's a necessity. It's like you should have a good tasting product. You should have well prepared food with fresh ingredients. You should have these things. These are not unique selling points anymore. They've become an expectation. And to think that, the customer experience starts and ends when the person sits down at your restaurant or checks into your hotel and then leaves is also a myth. It starts way before this, when the person first comes into contact with your with what you're selling, with your product, with your service, and it doesn't end when they leave. You know, Staying in touch, doing customer experience, customers. It goes on and on and on, and these things are not static. They're constantly being looked at and improved upon. So that's the first myth, and I think that there's another myth, like I touched on earlier, which is about having bespoke, sort of creations, which is great. Definitely something that we love diving into as well. But it's again, it's no longer a unique selling point. It's become an expectation when we're developing brands and identities for new hotels, new restaurants. We want to create something that isn't like something you can find down the street. Um, and having something that is bespoke, having something that is uniquely crafted is the expectation. So, what else are you going to do? And that what else isn't a quick fix. It's not static, like, oh, it's this thing here and then that's it. It's the mindset of constantly evolving, constantly striving towards, as you said earlier, being better, just a little bit better every single day, and listening to the feedback, listening to your customers, and trying to meet them where they're at by really uplifting that experience as much as you can.
It's super interesting when you said that, because I interviewed Ari Weinzweig from Singerman's about their journey, 40 years in business, very purpose-driven business from day one. And it was actually, he said we started the journey really with getting, it's given the product has to be great, and then later in the journey, they had like an idea, because it was a small business alignment around what the vision was. They had to start writing this kind of thing down, and they have now ended out with, I think, three really, really deep vision documents that talks about what does the business look in the future. And we're not talking next year, we're talking about 15 years is one of the vision. I think the one they just came out with recently is a 10-year one, 2032, because apparently that's where Ari and Paul think they probably going to be in a retirement or less involved, because they are in their 60s now. But it's really interesting how they develop that, and they work on it. They write it down, the heavy bit, and then they refine it all the time as things evolve. I think he wrote they would be in 2009 would be about 5 businesses, and they were, I think there were 7 businesses when they came to that, and since then they become 17 businesses. But they have a very specific way of talking about the future all the time, and then reassess how they develop as a brand or as a business, and how they express that. And you can see that on their journey, where if you go on their website, you can see how today you get the feel about what is this place. You just want to go to this place in nowhere in Ann Arbor. I haven't unfortunately been there myself, but I'm definitely going there because of that business and that brand. I bought books from them. He would don't want to sell on Amazon, so I paid a fortune for these books because I want to have the secret. I want to be part of it. Cooking books and management books, for that sake, from them. And I think it's such an interesting brand. If anyone that listens to the show, they should go and look at them and see how they use their story and purpose and explain that, and how they come back to it all the time, because they never done. It's a life works, he call it. It's never done.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that, just like your question said, what are some of the myths? I think that's one of the myths, is that you think that it's done, and it's the work is never done. And that's a good thing, because as we know, as we said before, life is not static. And so you want to have that sense of flexibility. And one thing I love about the example about buying books and, being involved in their purpose and their stories, that brands, when done well, are meant to be fluid, and they can be fluid. They can branch out into other things, cookbooks and different ways you can kind of, bring that sense of storytelling and purpose to people's homes, and find out where they are and how you can meet your customers where they're at. Can be very powerful, and can really set the stage for building something that lasts more than 10, 20, 30 years, 40 years down the line. Um, but as you said, it's not something that's static. You have to be able to be committed to evolving and moving and adapting.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. What is like with the work you do, and the last couple of years has been crazy in a way. But I think one of the questions I love to ask guests right now on the show is also, what has been like their life lessons or leadership lesson over the last couple of years.
Oh, that's a really good question. I think for me, just learning how to find my own voice, I think as a leader has been really important for me. I'm a really kind of, I wouldn't say shy, but I'm more of an introverted person. I spend a lot of time in my head thinking about things more than I spend my time kind of actually verbally saying things. And I think also as a creative and as an artist and a designer as well, I feel like I'm someone who's just been more observant to my environment, than somebody who actually is more vocal out there. So for me, the last couple of years has really been important for me to kind of work on my own personal brand story, and be more of a voice, in the industry of what we provide as a business as well, and even as a person, in my own perspectives as well. So that's been quite a journey, because it's not something that I'm used to. It's not something that comes naturally to me, but it's an important skill. And I think that, just like how we're talking about here, it's sometimes we can feel a bit shy, or like, well, who cares about stories, or who cares? Why would somebody be interested in what I have to say, or something of that nature? Or why would somebody care about why we have a restaurant, or why we have this thing? It's just we just do good work, and that should be enough. But that's no longer the case. One, that's no longer the case. Two, there's a very unique proposition to explore, and everybody's voice and experiences are their own. Yeah, everybody has something unique to bring to the table, and so that's something I've learned in the last couple of years, and it's something I'm actively working on. Is how to actually tell your story and be proud of it, and share your voice with your community.
It's really, 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 really interesting because so then it's for you. It's this is a big thing actually now starting to go out talking about what you believe, what you do, how you see the world, and you have actually had the opportunity as you see it as well. This is my time to go out and actually I talk about storytelling, help with storytelling. Now I also have to go and practice it.
Absolutely. I think that, a lot about brand development and business in a sense, I think are shared experiences. And I think that's what I love about what we bring to the table as an agency. It's not a we know everything and you don't know anything, but it's more of the we empathize and understand because we also have gone through these steps, and we've also felt the same objections and the same doubts and the same uncertainties that businesses feel. Because at the end of the day, um, brand building isn't just just because that's what we do, and that's the skill set that we bring to the table and the expertise that we bring to the table. We're not exempt from doing it ourselves. And in terms of personal brand, I'm not exempt from building my own personal brand as well. So it's a really great perspective because it allows us to be in the shoes of our clients and directly experience what works, what doesn't work very well, and what needs to be constantly revised and expanded upon as well.
Wow, super, super interesting. So just taking you a bit on to dovetail hospitality and how you see the future, the nearby future for hospitality. Because I guess as you work with brands, both in food and hospitality, what is your view from looking from the outside? How do you see things evolve? Because it feels a bit difficult in the moment for many.
Absolutely. That difficulty is definitely real, and it's definitely there. I feel like I'm going to take a very optimistic look, and I think that the future is bright. I don't think it's going to be an easy climb. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to happen overnight, but I think that there's going to be a lot of potential for hospitality to really kind of break the binds of what we know and to really embrace a sense of change, and create something that I think all of us are really itching for after being in lockdown. People are craving experiences. They want to get out. They want to see the world again. They want to connect better with other people and have richer, fuller, more memorable experiences and more memorable times that they can share with their loved ones. And just, enjoy life, because life is precious and it's short. So I think that there's a lot to explore, and a lot of positive potential. Again, I don't think that this is going to be something that's going to happen overnight. Change isn't easy. It's human nature to kind of want to push against and rebel against change. It's not something that I think human beings are prone to embracing in a constant way, but it's also something that is necessary. And I think that as long as we can stay open to new ways of doing things, new ways of sharing our stories, there's lots of positive potential ahead.
Yeah, that's super interesting. You talk about, we are definitely moving away from product features, benefits to this experience thing now. And I guess there's also the element of, another guest said, like, we just have to accept that people are going to have less money to spend. So when they then decide to go and have a hospitality experience, we need to make sure we're the one that stands out and going to get chosen, because they're going to think about it much more than they did before, because they want that emotional connection again, because it's going to be, with inflation and so on, for everyone, it's going to be a bit tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I don't think it's going to be an easy sort of waters to navigate at all. But I do feel like there will be potential for something new and interesting. And I think that one thing I love about these industries and these um, niches is that there's always new ways to innovate and to think about how we can do things differently, and meet people for where they're at. And so um, I'm quite hopeful. Again, I don't think this is going to be like an easy climb or an easy feat by any means necessary, but I'm hopeful and excited to see how things progress for sure.
What about yourself? You run a business as well. We already talked about, you've been around for 5 years. How do you show up pro every day? How do you get yourself in the right state as a business owner?
Yeah, I think that it's important to have perspective. I think that sometimes when we have businesses, we can kind of really be focused on the things that are not going the way we want them to, and our own kind of pain points and struggles, and we forget that we share these same pain points and struggles with other people in our industries, and the clients that we serve as well. And so, showing up with a sense of empathy, and a sense of wanting to help others, just get back to running our businesses and being successful in our own ways. And so I always try to show up with the idea of just trying to be helpful and to be open to new experiences and to adapting to change as much as possible, because there's a lot of change happening, especially in the creative industries as well. So there's always something to kind of learn and kind of readjust to. So keeping myself open to that has been key as of late, for sure.
What about, like, is there any, like, kind of book you go to? Do you have, like, your favorite book you would always give away, you always go back to? Because a lot of people that's been on the show, they have, like, either, an author, a book, or something where they find peace and they remind themselves on, this is how I can become better, or this is how I can show up pro.
Yeah. So for me, and this is not necessarily design related or hospitality related in any form, but I'm a huge fan of Stoicism, Stoic philosophy. So my go-to book is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Um, I have that on my nightstand. It's the book that I recommend it to family members, friends, and it's something that I go back to all the time, and it helps ground me into perspective of what I need to be focusing on, and it kind of gets me out of that feeling of despair, I guess, and kind of when you feel like nothing's really going your way, or when you feel like you need a bit of perspective in life, or you need to kind of get over a difficult moment or a difficult time. That book has always been something that it's been my go-to. I quite like it. So that would be my go-to book, and if anybody wants to look into that, I really highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's one of those classics in a way. It can be quite a heavy read. I actually got a copy myself, and really what made me, just to give the people a bit of a hint, that made me really like that book was actually, there's a guy called Ryan Holiday, and he interprets Marcus Aurelius' meditations. And then suddenly, actually, his books are so a bit like the children's book in Stoic, and then Marcus Aurelius is like, okay, now I have now studied the Stoics for a couple of years. Now I can really go into this book. But you're absolutely right. This is it's a bit like The Alchemist. I don't know if you know that book. It's like every time you open it, it gives you something new. And if you start writing down your thoughts as well, it becomes even more powerful. So I love that, and I think there's many people actually reads about the Stoic, and we don't talk enough about, and they are extremely useful in the time we go through right now, because it's about the art of living in principle, and that hasn't changed from the Greeks, the Romans, where this philosophy came out of from.
Absolutely. And I think that when we boil it down in terms of businesses, a lot hasn't changed from our basic need for communication, and relating to one another and sharing experiences and sharing commonalities with one another, which has been with us since the dawn of time, just like storytelling and just like a lot of what we discussed today as well.
Yeah, we'll make sure that book definitely get on the book list on the website, because actually I don't think we have meditations from Marcus Aurelius on our list yet. I don't know why, but we don't. And we'll make sure there's a link in the show notes for people out there. What about if I gave you the stage and said, what would your number one advice be to business leaders out there that's trying to build a business for the long term? Because that's what we've been talking about today.
Um, don't try to do everything on your own. Definitely work with vendors, and people who are experts at what they do in their chosen fields. I know the temptation of wanting to kind of just figure it out on your own, but the value of working with somebody, or a very well experienced vendor in your industry, can pay dividends in the long term. And yeah, play the long game. It's not, again, it's not something that we all want to hear, because we all want kind of, a lot of these things to happen already, because we need it to happen and we want it to happen. But focus on playing the long game and be open and flexible to new ideas. In fact, you should be open and flexible to new ideas more so, because that is usually what's going to give you that competitive edge when your competitors are just trying to stay afloat or maintain status quo. It's going against the grain and doing something different that can help set you onto a more profitable and more beneficial road in the long term.
What is the one question you wished I've asked you, and how would you have answered?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Maybe the value of art and visual art, and hospitality and interior spaces as well. I think that that can also be something that is looked over, but at times, but it can really play an integral part of the storytelling process, and really add to that overall dynamic, as well, when somebody comes to one of your spaces, or when somebody interacts with your product and service. So that would probably be an interesting thing to dive into as well.
That was a really interesting angle. Yeah, you take there. Love that. Where can people find you if they want to know more about your work, what you do? Maybe they want to ask you some questions about design. Maybe actually want to ask you something about the Stoics. You never know. They can definitely follow you on LinkedIn, as I said at the beginning, because you post some really interesting reflections.
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great place to connect. I do post a lot of content around identity and brand development as well. So always trying to add some value to to the community as well. So if you are curious about certain subjects and you just kind of want to read and feel get a better feel, I'm always posting content on LinkedIn. So feel free to connect with me there. You can see more of our studio's work at monograph.co.com. And you can find us on Instagram at Monograph&Co. And you can find me personally on Instagram as well at Sophia Ahamed, my name, and just one word. So yeah, that's probably the best way to connect.
Great. Thank you so much, Sophia, for coming on the show and sharing your journey, your knowledge about storytelling, brand building, and as well the Stoics.
Thank you so much, Michael, for having me. It was such a pleasure talking branding and talking about the Stoics with you. It was great.
Wow. Thank you, Sophia, for your insights on how to create better brands through storytelling. And also our conversation about how Stoic philosophy can actually improve both your life but also business. Now ask yourself, how are we using storytelling to effectively build a brand that stands out? And if you want to learn more about how to become better at storytelling, tune in to episode number 113 with Caroline Posma, founder of The Post, on binge marketing. A big thank you to Biz Simply for supporting us, bringing great insights, strategies, and tools to help leaders to become better every day. Check them out at bizsimply.com or the social at bizsimply or bizsimplyhq. You can also email them directly at podcast@bizsimply.com. A huge thank you to Fina Charlton, who is the show producer and editor from the Podcast Collective. I really appreciate that you are listening in. So if you enjoyed today's conversation, please share, rate, review, or subscribe to one of our channels, which all can be done via the website hospitalitymavericks.com. If you have any ideas or feedback for how we can improve the show or other thoughts, reach out to me via LinkedIn or my email, michael@hospitalitymavericks.com. Tune in next time for another interview. And in the meantime, find out more about us, subscribe to the weekly newsletter, Maverick Talk, with hospitalitymavericks.com. I'm Michael Tingsam, and you've been listening to the Hospitality Maverick podcast show. Be Maverick.